All right, here in chapter 24, looking at the genitourinary system diseases. So dividing this into the defenses of the genitourinary system, and then looking at the urinary system infections and the genital or reproductive system infections. So if we just look at how this system is divided, so we have the urinary tract. Of course, the purpose of it is to remove substances from the blood, kind of a filter, helps to regulate some of the body processes based on that, and then of course forms urine to transport that out of the body. And the function of our genital system is reproduction. Looking at the defenses of the urinary tract, mainly here with the urine, flushing and removing bacteria from the system. They also, of course, are lined with epithelial cells, but they have this desquamation of those, and that makes it hard for a lot of bacteria to gain a foothold. So particularly the bacteria adapted that can adhere to the GI tract, they cannot gain a foothold in the urinary tract due to the different lining experience there. The urine in the urinary tract is acidic, so even if bacteria do get in there, typically they're inhibited by that pH. There are also some enzymes, so lysozyme, that helps with especially those cell walls and those gram-positive bacteria, and then lactoferrin sucking up all that iron, and they have secretory IgA antibodies. The genital tract is mainly based on the normal biota. That's the main defense, and really just in the female tract is what we're focusing on. So these again are the normal microbes that live there that help protect by sucking up nutrients, covering space, etc. So previously the uterus and the organs involved in the reproductive system were thought to be sterile. However, now we know there are multiple microorganisms that live there to make up this normal biota. And typically the lactobacilli, or bacillus, is one of the more common ones. The presence of it actually helps lower the pH in the vagina. We'll come back to that in just a sec. Also, this microbial makeup actually shifts dramatically during the menstrual cycle. So even from week to week, that biota looks different in the female, even different again during pregnancy. And this is because of an effect called the estrogen glycogen effect, and we'll talk more about it in the next slide as well. But essentially, estrogen increases the amount of glycogen, which is a sugar source that these lactobacillus organisms up here that we mentioned and others can use to go through fermentation. And one of the products of fermentation is an acid that causes that lowering of the pH. Now, once individuals are postmenopausal, then their estrogen levels significantly decrease. So once estrogen kind of stabilizes, then their microbiota does as well. And then just to mention here, Candida albicans is actually part of the normal biota. Most women have low levels of this, and this is a fungus that leads to a yeast infection. But this is also why yeast infections can be common in women who are taking an antibiotic, because the antibiotic disrupts some of the other bacteria like the lactobacillus, and it allows those Candida albicans to grow more than they normally would and lead to that yeast infection. Now, some of the other defenses here again varying over time, but they have a secreted mucus that helps protect and line them, that again makes it hard for organisms to attach to or get through. This is the major defense during childhood and then after menopause, before that biota is really established. Again, those secretory IgA antibodies that we mentioned earlier, and then the low pH of the vagina. That's going to begin in adolescence. And as I mentioned before, this is due to the release of estrogen. And the release of estrogen increases glycogen, and that provides sugar and a fuel source for bacteria to use to ferment. And remember, fermentation, they don't go through aerobic respiration, and the byproduct of that fermentation is an acid. And that's why there's a lower pH, is due to those bacteria. And so the more estrogen that's available, the more fermentation and the more acidic the vagina is going to be. So before adolescence and then after menopause, that estrogen goes down. So the acidity also is removed as well. And then again, this biota of the women in childbearing years helps prevent not only the woman, but also the developing fetus. So it helps prevent infection during delivery and during pregnancy. All right, so then just looking at our kind of summary slides, thinking about some of these different diseases we're going to be talking about. So in females, we have all the different types of organisms kind of present, but only one that is caused by helminth or the worm, that's the schistosoma. One protist that we'll talk about, which is trichomonas. So the trick is one of the sexually transmitted diseases. And then only one fungi that we already mentioned, the Candida albicans, that yeast infection. The majority, though, of course, are going to be made up of our bacteria and viruses. And that's the same case in the males, so mainly bacteria and viruses that we're going to see. The schistosoma, though, is the helminth, but there's no protist or fungus that occurs in males.